You are now listening to the podcast where authors inspire listeners to become authors, the Going North Podcast. I'm your host, certified self-leadership trainer, best-selling author, and book enthusiast, DomBrightmon. And you're going to be listening to a different author that will inspire you to join the business of immortality, known as authorship. Now let the fun begin. Today's episode is sponsored by book number 2 from DomBrightmon, Stay the Course, The Elite Performer's 7 Secret Keys to Sustainable Success. It is the field guide to help unleash the elite performer that is inside of you. Cop it today on Amazon.com or heading over to DomBrightmon.com and snag it in book, ebook, and audiobook, so that way you can take it on the go and get yourself on the go to your northbound success. And today on the highlight reel builder for authors known as the Going North Podcast, we got another super special, awesome human for you today, courtesy of one of the best websites ever, known as podmatch.com, the wonderful site where podcast guests get to connect with podcast hosts. And if they're cool, they're freaking in. Today's guest is in, baby. That's right, indeed. Cooler than 2 cucumbers, indeed, because we got the JB in the building, baby, because today's wonderful author is a coach as well as a fellow speaker as well as an entrepreneur. So let's give it up for Jeff Butorac. How you doing today, Jeff?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it.
Woohoo! That's right, indeed. Hashtag Jeff the Baller, baby. That's right, indeed. He knows how to ball in more ways than one. That's right, indeed. And I just realized, like, man, has the family ever called themselves the Butorac since you're a tennis guy?
Oh, I've heard that before. That's not the first time. Oh, yeah. That's not the first. That's right.
Yeah, because it just hit me like, hey, wait a second. Why did I make that correlation earlier? It's like, oh,
Yeah.
I guess it was meant to happen now. It's like, oh, all right. The light bulbs are still on.
There you go.
But hey, it ain't about light bulbs. It's about my man, Jeff. So my goodness, as with all introductions, they're not allowed to be 79 years long, and I probably only covered, I don't know, maybe 9 minutes of content. So my goodness, so mind filling in any cavities I may have missed about you, my man?
No, yeah. Right now, I've coached basketball in the past. I'm currently coaching some tennis, and like you said, I've written a book, Inner Rival: Silencing the Negativity Within, where I work with athletes about how to improve their mindset, improve their performance by improving their mindset, and it also translates into all those nice real world situations where we got to try to strengthen that mind, and especially in today's world, it gets crazier than ever. So then I've gotten out and speak with teams and speak with businesses and different conferences and that sort of thing. So just trying to spread the good word.
You go. That's right, indeed. The gospel of ball, and you love to see it.
Yeah, there you go. Great gospel.
That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. And being able to coach all them different sports too. So, my goodness, being able to coach at both the high school and the collegiate level. Like, what was the major difference between coaching the two? Because I'm pretty sure at the collegiate level, I'm sure the demand was way higher.
Yeah, it is high, but it's very high at the high school level, especially these days. High school coaches don't have it easy. It's we're kind of in the world where people kind of expect more and more and more, and it's no different in the world of coaching. That was one of the things that sort of brought me to the breaking point of why I had to step away with coaching after dealing with anxiety. That was one of the things, was just the expectations of what I had to do for coaching just the high school sport. It got to be too much for me, and I kind of mentally got to a place where I was expecting too much of myself. And so the nice thing about college sports a lot of times is that you have so many more hours in a day to get things done. High school coaches oftentimes have a full-time job and then are doing the high school coaching on the side, in their free time and on their weekends. And in a sport like basketball, it's such a long season. It starts in October a lot of times, maybe mid-November, goes till March. So, you're going through your Thanksgivings, your Christmases, your New Year's, you're trying to plan all these different schedules. And In the world of high school athletes, it's not always the most important thing. There's a lot of other things that go on. You're still living with your family. You're at the will of your parents a little bit as a student. Whereas once you get to the college level, if they're playing a college sport, more or less that sport is one of the top priorities of their life. So they want to make the time to be able to do things. They don't mind the early hour practices as much, or the extra weight rooms, or whatever it might be. So I wouldn't say that college coaching is any easier as far as the demands that are put upon the coach. I would just say they're a little different. It's in college coaching, a big part of the demand is recruiting. So, making sure you're getting out and seeing the players, you're talking to the players, you're getting them into campus, you're going out and doing all your due diligence as to figuring out is this a good person to bring in? So that is a high demand of time and effort from coaches. I remember a lot of times, I started college coaching before the world of the smartphone. So we had to call the recruits. Every night I would sit home with a list of 5 or 6 recruits, saying, all right, I got to knock out these phone calls. And if they didn't answer that day, it could be done really quick. If they did all answer, I could be on the phone for 3 hours at night. So, they're both extremely demanding. I think they're only becoming more demanding, which is tricky. And I think that's why at the high school level, they are in need of coaches at so many sports, because people are realizing, man, this takes a lot of time and effort. And if you have, like, I was lucky where I didn't have a wife and kids at the time, so I had all that free time. You had a wife and maybe 2 or 3 kids on top of it. Man, that time window really shrinks as to what you can do. So it's a toss up. You got to kind of pick your poison if you're going to coach one or the other. Where do you not mind making your concessions and putting your time?
Hey, that's very vital right there indeed, because it's so true. Because it's like, yeah, a lot of folks there, it's like, especially if they're teachers too at the high school level, it's like, oh, you gotta teach class, and then you gotta freaking coach, and then if they're a parent, if they have a spouse too, it's like, god dang, family time. It's like
Yeah, yeah. I mean, during the winter season, when you're a coach, like, let's say you're a teacher, so you get to school at maybe 7 a.m. You're usually the last one to leave practice after all the kids leave. So you're leaving at 6, 7 o'clock at night. You're at a 12-hour day there, and you're doing that for, gosh, 3 months. So it's a very, very big strain on the family life. That's what makes it tough for a lot of coaches that have the families.
yes, indeed, yes, indeed. And my goodness, I guess all that pressure led to a bunch of panic and anxiety attacks. So my goodness, man, being able to go through all of that and come out on the other side and actually create more content, man, because you got this wonderful book and Arrival, man. So what was I guess, the journey from quitting the good old college collegiate coach all the way to finally joining the business of immortality?
Yeah, it was the whole anxiety thing. It was sort of a slow burn. It built up over the course of about 4 or 5 years or so. Looking back on it now, I can see when it began. At the time, you don't even realize you're going through it all, and it wasn't a big like aha moment, like bang, you just can't handle it. It was, like I said, it was over the course of 4 years, and then I got to the point where I just wasn't happy ever. I was always irritable and frustrated. Completely stopped enjoying going to practice, which I had heard long ago as a coach, if you don't enjoy practice, that's the time to get out. And when I started dreading to go to practice, that's sort of when I was like, okay, something's not right here, because it had nothing to do with the players I was working with. It was, I had very much the perfectionist mentality. I cared a lot about what people thought. And those are things you can't do if you're going to be a head coach, because it never ends up being perfect. There's always going to be something to improve. And, it's tricky when you're a coach, everybody judges every decision you make. And that was part of what I was going through as parents, players, fans, athletic directors, everybody had an opinion. And you can't make everybody happy. And I was struggling with that side of it. So when I stepped away from coaching, a big part of what I enjoyed about it was the mental side of coaching. The how do we grow as people? How do we grow? How do we use sports to grow? Right? Everyone says sports builds character. Well, not necessarily. It doesn't build character if you don't allow it to build the character, right? If you're a parent and you're paving the way for your kids so they don't have to go through any challenges, they don't ever have to sit on the bench and those things. Well, then it doesn't build character. So I I knew that I could learn so much from sports. So actually, what I did was I learned everything I could in the realm of sports psychology. I read every book I could find about self help, about building confidence, your self talk, anything a sports psychologist would work with athletes on. I just kind of dove headfirst into, whether it's books, articles, videos, anything. And I started just piecing things together, taking something out of this book that makes sense, and then I'd read this article like, oh, those two things kind of match up. Okay, that there's something going here. And then I would hear, I would listen to a podcast and Jocko Willink or somebody would say something like, okay, there's something to this. Now I got all these people. Now I got to figure out how to kind of implement it into my life, and what do I agree with and not agree with, and who am I? There's a lot of becoming self-aware of, who am I, what do I believe, what do I think, what's important to me, what's not important to me. And just through all of that, I just started to come out on the other end of this anxiety and this panic attacks. And it was a journey, man. It was, gosh, 3 years that I was going through all that stuff, even before I started writing my book. It was 3 years of just learning and studying and growing, because the only thing I knew is that's how I became a better coach. Was I just read every book I could find. I watched every coaching DVD I could find, talked to every coach, went to every camp, did all this. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing with my mindset. And over the course of a few years, I was just kind of worked my way out of it. The same way I got into the anxiety is the same way I've kind of worked my way out of it. It wasn't an aha one time thing. It was 3 years of work. It takes 3-4 years to go downhill. It takes just as long, if not longer, to come back uphill. It's not an overnight thing. So when I got sort of at the end of that road, I thought, okay, what do I want to do? I don't think I want to be a basketball coach at the moment. And I need to figure, I like that world of working with students and athletes and in the gym and on the court and all those sort of things. And it sort of just kind of became a natural progression, especially because of all the mental health stuff going on. People are starting to be okay with talking about it. People are becoming more aware of how important it is and the way it affects athletes and performers and students, and especially our youth with social media and the internet and all these different things. I kind of just thought, hey, there's a niche here. There's something here, a way I can be of service, a way I can go through what I went through, take my experiences, because there was nothing unique about what I went through. I didn't have some sort of crazy situation that through. It was just slowly being more and more negative with myself and getting myself into a mindset where I couldn't find a way out, and eventually worked my way out. So many people are going through that journey. So many students, and athletics is just a world I love. I love being a part of it. So why not find a way to build all that together? And that's sort of where the book came from, which has translated into a speaking business and working with athletes and coaches and teams, and to where I'm at today.
Oh, that's what I'm talking about indeed. I'm talking about indeed. Being able to transmute that good old pain into power. That's right, indeed. Dealing with that inner rival.
Yes, sir.
Indeed. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. So, my goodness. So, I guess with all the coaching that you've done, fun question for the coaches that usually pop on the show. And it's kinda different because it's usually, like, business and executive coaching,
Sure.
but this
Yeah.
man's done, like it's basically like, kids. So my goodness, so from all of your years of coaching, what would you consider the biggest lesson you've learned from coaching all the folks you coached over the years that made you a better coach?
There's so many ways to look at things, right? And one of the things that really stressed me out was, as a coach, I could do everything that I can to try to help you. But if you're not trying to do those things, then it's never going to happen. And that's okay. That's to understand that as a coach, that all right, I've done what I can. They didn't receive it, or they didn't accept it, and okay, there's nothing else I can do in being okay with that. That's where a lot of that anxiety came from because I kept just drilling with myself. What else do I need to do more of to get through? What else do I? And at some point, you've done what you can, and you're okay with the effort that you put in as a coach. Now, that being said, you don't want to just say, "Oh, I tried and give up." Right? So there's a delicate balance in there as a coach of, "Hey, I'm going to do what I can to help you, but if you really want to be a better basketball player or tennis player or even a business executive or a salesman or whatever, if let's say you're in sales, I could teach you every line, every sales technique, every way to start a call, to end a call, to follow up. But if you don't even try to use those things, then it doesn't matter what I teach you. You're not going to get better." So to take that off of myself, I think made kind of was a big realization for me. What I learned after being a coach, right, was that hey, it's you do everything you can, and then they got to take it and run with it. Being a coach was all the different ways that you need to think about that you can try to reach people, right? It's people are so different. You get a team of 20 basketball players or 20 salesmen on a team or 20 managers that you supervise. You got to approach each one differently in different circumstances, and to try to figure out the uniqueness and the different ways that you can approach something was a big learning experience, because it's all just that. It's experience, right? People can say you can try this and try that and do this and do that, but until you go through these different situations and have these different conversations and have these experiences, you don't really know what's going to work. So that was always a continual ongoing learning process of, hey, this guy reacts this way to this thing, but then when I say it, this guy reacts differently. And I coach men and women, so that adds another layer on how interactions work. But yeah, just the different ways you can approach. It's not a, and that's what makes it fun, I think, is it's not a one size fits all. It's how you kind of view it almost as a mystery. How can I approach each one? How can I approach each person? Well, how am I going to get the most out of this person? So yeah, that's it's been an interesting experience, and it's now no different with where I'm at. Each coach I talk to is different. Each set of players or people that I speak to is looking for something a little bit different. So trying to figure out what they want and then deliver on that has been a fun experience.
Fun on the bun experience, indeed, is what I'm talking about, indeed. Because you're so right, because that's the thing about coaching is like the person or the coachee on the other side is like, hey, like, you actually got to do the freaking work. You can't just take the advice all day and do nothing with it. It's like, dude,
Exactly.
it's a waste of time for both folks.
Right. And so much that's what happens, working with athletes. So much it's in one ear and out the other, and they just kind of go throughout and do the same thing that they were doing before. That it's very fun and it's special when I'm sure it's the same way working with salespeople or in any business sense, or in the world of music, where you say, hey, try this. And even if it doesn't work, you see them try it. And you're like, hey, this person's gonna figure it out because they're trying it. And that's how you get better, right? I mean, just like your podcast, each one gets a little bit better than the last one, right? If you look at where your first one was to where you are today, you're like, man, I've learned so much now. It's completely different. And I feel the same way every time I speak in front of a new group of people, or every time I'm on somebody else's podcast. Man, I'm learning something every time I go. And it's fun when you get to work with people that are like that.
Yeah, indeed. Heck yeah, indeed. So, my goodness, man. So, since you've been on a bit of a tour, podcast tour that is promoting the work that you're doing, is there a question that you wish folks would ask you more often when you're on the guest side of the microphone?
It's not a specific question. I think people sort of the same way that I said, everyone is looking for something different when I speak. Every podcast that I've been on and every group that I've spoken in front of, they're looking for a little something different. And it's in the world that I'm working with trying to strengthen that mindset, and like I say, silence that inner rival. It all sort of blends together, right? So, like in my book, the idea behind it is the introduction is sort of my story, much deeper than we've dove into, to the entire introduction, and then 10 different ways that you can silence that negative voice in our head. And the idea is I'm very much I'm a believer in that science base. If you're going to tell me something that's a fact, show me why it's a fact, right? If you say, hey, you can silence your negative voice by doing this, show me how, tell me how, prove me, don't just say it, show me how. And so I do as much of that as I can in this book, as for example, talking about the way we talk to ourselves, right? I'm not just going to say, hey, if you speak nicely to yourself, you're going to perform better. I'm going to say, when you talk to yourself in this way, this is what you get. And here are the studies that have shown us that. So I just enjoy the curiosity of people saying, hey, this is what I kind of tend to say to myself, or I struggle with this issue. What would you do if you were me? And then we go from there. Because everybody is so unique, every host is unique, every group you speak in front of is unique. So it's what's important to them. But yeah, all questions are welcome. I am a firm believer, and there's no dumb questions, there's no bad questions. If it's something you wonder about, fire away. Reach out to people on Facebook or on social medias. If you're curious about something, reach out to a specialist in that world and ask questions. There's nothing wrong with that. Worst they can say is no.
There you go. That's right indeed. That's right indeed. That's right indeed. So my goodness, so being able to put this book together, is there gonna be a follow up sequel book, or is there some more books you got cooking in your noodle, my man?
That's a good question, and it's funny. The very first person I gave my book to when I got it said, "Oh, when are you going to write your second one?" That's the very first question they asked. It's like, man, I literally just got this today. So, um, as far as the second book, honestly, I never planned to write a first one. I had a former coach. I'm a big reader, and a former coach I worked with years ago asked me, "Hey man, when are you going to write your book? You read so much. When are you going to write yours?" I'm never going to write a book. I don't want to do that. That's something I never want to do. And until the day I sat down to write it, I never thought I was actually going to write one. It still wasn't even in my plan. It just sort of came organically. That being said, I would not be against writing another one. I need to build some sort of idea of what's behind it, or have something hit me, or find an avenue that I want to explore more. I haven't had that yet. This thing came out about 6 months ago, 7 months ago now. So I'm very much and still promoting this book, getting this out there, trying to see how I can get this book to help as many people as possible. But I'm definitely not against it. This one is about a 3-year process, and I'm sure if I write another one, it'll be about that long as well. So maybe there'll be another one coming, but I want it to be something that I'm passionate about. If I do write it, it's I'm not just going to write one to write one and get it out there and try to make money. And it's got to be something that I feel that the way I feel with this book is I think this can really help a lot of people. I think it can help a lot of athletes, a lot of performers and salesmen, and people that are in a world where performance to a degree matters. But yeah, someday hopefully I'll have enough good ideas again to write another one.
That's right indeed.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of another one, you still got this fabulous one right here, The Inner Rival, Silencing the Negativity Within. So if
Yes,
that book
sir.
were a food, what would it be and why?
Oh gosh, that is a tough question. Oh man. It would be something like a hamburger or hot dog is something that everybody likes, right? It's going to be something that everybody can enjoy. There's no there's yeah, I think that's a good way to go about it. There's a little something in there for everybody. You'd never meet anybody that really doesn't like a hamburger, so I hopefully won't meet anybody that doesn't like this book.
Yeah, indeed. That's right. Even the vegans, they get their veggie burgers. They'd be all right.
Exactly. There's so many options nowadays, right? You get the Impossible burgers out there.
That's right indeed. But the good news is it's possible indeed when you face your inner rival
Yes,
indeed.
sir.
That's right. Indeed. That's right indeed. So my goodness, so out of the wonderful 10 tips, my goodness, any one you want folks to sneak away with before they devour the whole book, my man?
Yeah, a big one for me, so each chapter is sort of a topic, and the fourth chapter in the book is learning what controlling the controllables are. And that's a big thing that people stress over, is things that they have zero control over. What other people say, what other people think, things that are going to happen in the future, things that happened in the past. You have no control over any of those things, right? So you only have actually control over two things, and that's your thoughts and your actions, and that's in the moment. You don't have over control over anything you said 2 minutes ago or that you're going to say in 2 minutes. So understanding that for me was game changer. Was a way that I relieved a lot of stress, a lot of the worry, a lot of the anxiety. That left my plate when I was really able to internalize that message of, okay, X, Y, and Z happen throughout the day. I have no control over those things, right? I'm gonna just do what I can, and whatever happens, happens. For me, that was a big thing in being able to overcome just things happening in crazy situations, right? Unexpected things go wrong all of a sudden, just big catastrophes, and whatever your event was going to be. Man, you have no control over that. All right, what we do have control over, however, is how we respond to what happens to us, and that, to me, like I said again, was a game changer. And a lot of that I kind of took from reading books on stoicism, and specifically Ryan Holiday, who's become a pretty big author and pretty big guy on Instagram and social media nowadays. I'm a huge fan of his, and what he kind of explains with stoicism is the overall principle of it is we don't control what happens to us, but we do control how we respond. And to me, that's a game changer. Is okay, I'm not going to control what someone says to me, but I do control what I say back. I control my blood pressure. I control how I feel bodily in my reaction to what they say, good or bad. So being able to understand that, internalize that, and try to live that principle, that I think was the first step in being a huge game changer for me.
So I'm talking about indeed. Definitely control the controllables, y'all. That's right, indeed. That good old
Yes,
TNA,
sir.
y'all. That's right, indeed. The thoughts and actions. That's right, indeed. Thoughts and actions, indeed. That's right, indeed. Got to focus on that. Heck, even Ryan Holiday. I should probably try to get him on the show because, like, like, he is definitely a great writer, and I haven't read all of them, but Ego is the Enemy. Like, that's probably my favorite book from him
It's
thus
a
far.
fantastic book. I got them. I got all his books. They're fantastic, and they're all very applicable to today's world, which is a lot of what I tried to do. I tried to take these ideas, of we control our thoughts and our actions, and then apply it to situations that you're going to face on an everyday situation. And then I also give you examples just from what I've every chapter I try to give you examples of what I went through, how I screwed up doing this, or how I've used this to improve myself, or how I learned from this situation. So there's a lot of self revealing in this too. I pull back the curtain, I show you guys my hard times and my good times in this book.
That's right indeed. That's right indeed. It's a good read indeed. That's right indeed. So my goodness, are coming down to the magical question that every
All right.
guest gets to receive, and that is if you wake up tomorrow and you are 25 again, but you're still in the current year. What advice would you give to yourself?
Man, stay away from that social media. Stay away from that social media. I think I say that I think there's a lot of good things with social media, right? I've really tried to curate everything that I have pop up on my feeds. It's people saying motivational things, or I follow CrossFit athletes and people that can inspire and help uplift you and grow you, because when you pull that up, it's gonna show you more of what you look at, right? So if it's key, you keep looking at that positive stuff. When you pull it up, you're not going to feel terrible about yourself. When you put it down, you're going to feel pretty good. Hey, I read some sort of quote that made some sense to me, right? Like I was talking about Ryan Holiday. I follow his Daily Stoic. I follow his personal account. Boom, there's some good looking stuff for me every day when I pull it up there. I try to share the same things on my social media. I don't love social media, but it is part of today's world. And if we want to get our message out there, that's part of what we have to do. So I want to try to be a positive, but not just happy go lucky positive in a way that we're going to get better. So positive and productive. I try to push that out there. And, I think if you curate your social media to show you that stuff, things are looking good. If you look at all the other things you can look at and start feeling bad about your day, and all of a sudden it's a lonely road and hard to get back up from where you go down. So yeah, be careful with the social media would be a better way to say it. I wouldn't say stay off it, but be careful with it.
Oh, heck yeah, indeed. But hey, that's definitely a necessary evil, depending on who you ask. It's like, hey, it's a freaking great tool to have.
Yep.
Helps us to hyperspeed connect with just about anybody on Earth that we would like to connect with, indeed. And hey, it's still for good. And for those who see the evil online, just avoid it like the plague, like the old school plague. That's right, indeed.
Exactly. There you go.
That's right, indeed. Well, speaking of avoiding like the plague, folks need to do the opposite and they need to run towards the well of wisdom known as your wonderful content. So, for those who need to keep up with your journey, my man, what's the best way for folks to do so, Jeff?
Absolutely. Yeah. You can find me on Instagram or Facebook at Inner Rival. You could check out my website at www.inner-rival.com. And if you ever got any questions, you want me to come speak with you, if you want to work individually, just reach out to me, send me an email, and we'll get connected.
Oh, well, there you have it, folks. That's right indeed. That's right indeed. My man Jeff has got you covered like a blanket. That's right indeed. If you want to get in a boxing ring with yourself, he's got you covered. That's right
That's right.
indeed. That's right indeed. And the good news is you'll win either way. Maybe.
That's right. Just keep fighting. You can win.
That's right indeed. Don't let the evil twin win. That's right indeed.
That's right.
Because the evil twin wins, you'll take your bank account and you'll have a bunch of random camel plushies in your house, and you'll be like, man, I guess it's hump day in the house now. Every day.
There you go.
Oh man. Well, before the evil twin tries to buy a bunch of penguin plushies, any parting words before we close up shop, my man?
No, man, I really appreciate everything you're doing for everybody here by sharing this podcast, and thank you for having me out here to spread my message, and hopefully we help some people today.
If you're hearing this part of the episode, that means you're one cool individual. Thanks a bunch for tuning in, and if you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to share it with at least one other person in your network. Bonus points for 3. And be sure to check out the backlog too while you're at it, because there are hundreds of wonderful episodes to choose from as well.